Welcome to another episode of the Hat Collecting the Multi-Passion Experience, the special Disability Pride Month edition here. Doing a special series this month, speaking to a variety of fellow people in the disabled community. I am your host, Lacey Artemis. My pronouns are she and they. I am a white, early 40s, feminine presenting person with long brown hair, and I'm currently wearing a green top with black polka dots on it. And I am joined today by my guest, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm April. I am a white female in 34, dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a pink, blue, and orange floral dress. And I'm so excited to be here today.
Yes, thank you for joining me. I met April through an event that I believe you organized that event.
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah, it was. Could you tell us a little bit about that event that you organized?
Yeah. So I was inspired just to meet more people in the community around my age who had hearing loss or a connection to hearing loss because I find it really hard, especially in your 20s and 30s, 40s, to be able to express your hearing loss because everything in that industry is so catered to 60 plus. And, I started this community, Hard to Hear It, a few years ago because I was looking for community and I realized it's time to meet people in person. As much as like the online world is great, why not have an event to meet people in person and to share our stories and become friends in real life?
Yeah, excellent. And that's where I met you, and I got a copy of your. It blurs on here. You
Yeah.
got it there. Okay. It's called "We're Tired of Explaining 20 Things Hearing People Don't Seem to Get About People with Hearing Loss." And I was flipping through it there. I was like, "This is beautiful." Like, I mean, I'm not. I only have like some hearing loss, some hearing difficulties, but as I actually just spoke to the previous guest about, it's like I realized like this is the best it's ever going to be, probably. So, that sounds more doomers than I mean it to, but just meaning that like I've become aware that I am getting on in my life, and I mean 40 is still very young, realistically, but it is a thing that like, and two, the other thing I mentioned to the past guest was that I've had my hearing tested professionally within the last like I think year and a half now, and I apparently test completely within normal ranges for my age. Like, but between the tinnitus and the auditory processing issues from autism, I have been struggling a lot more in recent years. So, yeah. I didn't know if you had any comments that you wanted to give based on that, or we can jump into the questions if you want.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating that you said like when they said it was normal for your age. I feel like that is an interesting statement for like a professional to make because what does that mean? Like, does it mean that everyone's hearing slowly declines as we age? Like, is that what like is to be expected? Because if that's the case, I think education in the hearing health industry as a whole does need to improve on explaining that to people and explaining the entire process of like what hearing loss can look like as we grow older. I mean, my story, I was diagnosed at 25, so 9 years ago. I'm now 34. I was never expecting to get hearing loss in my 20s. But again, I had no idea about anything hearing health related. I actually went to my family doctor because that's what I thought I was supposed to do when I was like struggling to hear out of my left side. And then she sent me to a specialist, and I was like, audiologist, cool. What do you do? Who are you? What's going to go on here? And that's when I had my first hearing test and was told right then and there I needed to get a hearing aid. And yeah, I was 25. Like, I think it's one of those things that should be taught at a younger age to understand your hearing health and like how it's connected to a lot more than you realize. Like you mentioned, like your hearing is normal for your age, but like you're still struggling in some ways to understand things, which is connected, right? Like that needs to be explained in a bigger way, I think.
So you kind of already touched on the first question here. Is hearing loss the only disability that you experience?
Yes, yes. I have what's called otosclerosis, which is a form of hearing loss, which is an abnormal bone growth in the middle ear. So it started on my left side, and now I'm bilateral. It can be genetic. As far as I know, no one else in my family has it. Um, but yeah, it's it's been an interesting 9 years, but I that's it's part of who I am now, and it's been an interesting journey.
And how has your family learned to navigate this transition with you?
That's a good question. So I'm very, very fortunate to have had a very accepting family and friends group. And I know that's not the case for everyone, which is again why I started my channel to kind of be that support for people who don't have it. And I think because they've been so supportive about it, it's made my journey so much easier. I think if it was different, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. Um, but that's another reason I started this little guide, though, because as much as they're supportive, there are so many things that if you don't have hearing loss, you really don't understand all the little pieces that go along with it. And, when I was 25, 26, I was really struggling how to explain certain aspects of my hearing loss to people. And so that's why I decided to put it down on pen and paper to be like, "Hey, here's a conversation starter. Like try and understand the little things like why I don't want to phone you. I'd rather text or like why I prefer to be in a quiet room versus, background music or the radio on." And it's not easy to express or to advocate for yourself and can be very overwhelming and stressful. And so as much as my family's been supportive, there are still habits that are hard to break, for lack of a better word. And I think, um, yeah, I think it's one of those things that no matter how great people are in your life, you'll still probably have to advocate for yourself in some way.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting for me because, like I know I said I've been struggling with this more noticeably to myself in the last few years, and kind of just in the last, I think within this year, within 2025, since I've kind of finally gone out really on my own as an entrepreneur, a freelancer. I've finally like because I've been doing so much networking and trying to go to as many events as I can, and I'm getting into like public speaking and events as like my profession now. So I've been running into it a lot more, and I kind of had to make this decision at one point to be like, I need to just start embracing this and just start putting like in addition to my normal name tag like an additional one that says like hard of hearing. And like I know some people are just gonna like yell at me, and like I'm gonna have to start to like clarify that. I'm like, I can hear, I just like I struggle with filtering. So when there's a lot of extra background noise, like you put it, like it drives me nuts when I go to social events and they have loud music playing. I'm like, how are people supposed to talk? Oh, like they have to yell at each other. And it's like, that's just stupid. And so that was also part of like one of the many reasons why I started my own events company, which is already Mix Events. Oh, sorry. This my screen privacy blur is kind of making it hard to see things. I apologize, but yeah, I'm trying to be more open and upfront about that, and it's just kind of something I decided. Now I'm kind of learning how to navigate that because now I'm going to have to do a lot of educating that I didn't even really go through necessarily myself. But just knowing like, yeah, don't yell at people, and like just calmly repeat yourself. Or like another thing I noticed, and this is not anyone's fault because most people never really need to use microphones on a regular basis, but I noticed a lot of people don't know how to hold a microphone correctly. And I say correctly, like you need to actually point the top of it at your mouth. If you're holding it down in front of you and like just speaking forward, it's barely going to pick you up. So things like that, and yeah, the events that I want to do, I want to try to make them like the auditory sensory stuff is my primary struggle, but I have lots of friends who are wheelchair users or cane users or other people with other struggles. So I am getting into advocacy now around trying to like make events more generally widely accessible.
That's
um,
awesome. I think that's a really good point, though, that you brought up because I think pre social media, there was no way to kind of educate people on a grander scale about these things. And if you've never experienced it, how or why would you know to adjust in certain situations? And I think as much as social media has many, um, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but like there's so many great things about social media and so many not so great
it's
things
a
about
double-edged
social media, but
sword.
it has allowed us to educate people about these things about in-person events to make them more accessible. But again, if you've never put yourself in that situation, if you've never met someone with hearing loss or met someone with a different disability, how do you know how to like appropriately do that? So I think that again is about the educating people to the best of our ability and just hoping that they pick it up and, do it themselves. But there's so much education, I feel like, about everything that we just need to get better at. I think social media has unfortunately decreased our communication skills in many ways, but then in other ways, it's helped get information out there. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what you said a moment ago about like teaching this, starting to teach this right from the beginning. I was talking to the past guest about that, about because I know I learned this from my sister when she has kids and I don't, and she taught her first kid a bit of like infant sign language so that it could communicate to get needs met before it could speak. But of course, once the kid learns to talk, then the sign language stops getting used and it gets forgotten. And when I learned sign language, it's like I can see how this could be useful in so many instances. And like, there's no reason we can't learn it. Like, it's not that hard. I mean, maybe I don't have a right to say that, but like, I didn't feel like it was that hard. So I do think that's one of many things that we could very easily teach starting in like kindergarten and just keep going with it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's one of those things that like if you want it bad enough, it'll come to you. But
Mhm.
for people who just like aren't like 100% on board about it, it might be harder for them to learn. And I think yeah, I mean, I think it's beneficial for so many people to learn. I've tried. I know I talk a bit about that on my channel. It's just one of those things that it's not a part of my daily life yet. So I know a couple words, but I could totally get better at it. And I do feel guilty sometimes because I'm a part of the hearing loss community that I don't know it. But I think that's also one of those points in the community that like it's pushed on you and it's not necessarily, I don't want to say needed for everyone, but it's not a part of everyone's community or support, I guess, for lack
Yeah.
of better word.
Yeah, and I want to clarify when I said it was easy for me to clarify that. I have really good like memory for like language. I'm good at like remembering like signs and things, but I've definitely struggled with the speed that fluent or native signers
Right.
sign with, and it's kind of similar how like I love Spanish and I still remember a lot of the Spanish I learned, but when people are speaking full native speed, it was like I might pick out like two words out of a sentence, and so I found it easy to like learn and retain the individual signs and like the meanings, but the actual like full speed of it is still a lot. um, yeah, I guess so. The next question on the list, we kind of touched on a bit already, was like, you do some advocacy work as opposed to being someone who just is living their life and just happens to be disabled. So can you talk a little bit, maybe a little bit more about what forms of advocacy you do currently engage in?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think advocacy means so many different things because it's really hard to do. But I think just by like how I started to get into it was like anytime I met someone new, I would immediately just tell them that I have hearing loss. And that started to just really build my confidence about talking about my hearing loss and expressing how I need to be communicated with. And I realized by me doing that, I am likely helping someone else because now that person that I've spoken to, hopefully they remember, be like, oh, next time I encounter someone with hearing loss, maybe this will help them too. And I found just talking about it, and again, why I started my channel, as much as I'm doing it to help myself, I do hope that there's a ripple effect and it starts to help more people who don't have the confidence to necessarily express their needs, but they might be able to share my post with someone, be like, hey, this is kind of what I'd like you to understand more about my journey. And again, with this little guide, I created it because it's really hard to start those conversations. And I think the more we can speak to people, whether it be our audiologist, our ENT, our neighbor, whatever, the way we can just express how we need to be communicated with just helps advocating for the community as a whole, whether you realize it or not. And I hope that answered your question. I feel like I got off a little there, but
No, you made a good point as well, and I guess we can take a quick moment here to. So you also do a podcast, and you also have a YouTube channel.
oh yes, fair enough.
So so why don't we take a moment to explicitly talk about those
Sure,
and
yeah.
discuss them.
So I started actually on YouTube, funnily enough. I thought YouTube was like a way I could story tell more. And then I realized I need to promote my YouTube channel. So then I started Instagram and I never ever imagined it would become what it was. But I found the more I spoke on different platforms, the more it connected to more people. And so I have YouTube, I have Instagram, I do have Facebook and TikTok, but they're not really anything. But yeah, I started just over a year ago a series on my YouTube channel called Hear Me Out, where I talk to anyone connected to hearing loss, whether it's a professional, someone who has hearing loss, or tinnitus, or Meniere's disease, or whatever. Because I think, like, the way I saw, process starting this channel was if we can share everyone's unique experience, someone out there who's struggling will feel connected and heard in some way. Um, and it's been really fun to talk to people about their stories and be like, yeah, that's like me too. And oh my goodness, like you're 34, like me too. And like, it's so nice to talk to someone who gets it. Cause I've said this before, like my husband, he's great. I can talk to him about anything, but he doesn't have hearing loss. He doesn't quite get what I'm saying. And so speaking to people and sharing other people's stories and using my platform to share other stories is just it's been amazing, and I absolutely love it.
What you were just saying about your husband kind of well, thank you, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Sorry, my ADHD is kind of kicking in a little bit here, because you mentioned that your husband doesn't experience hearing loss, so he doesn't understand that experience. And that kind of got me thinking, because I have like sound sensitivity because of my autism, which is this unfortunate catch 22, that I often am trying to like prevent sound from getting to me as much, and that makes it harder to hear, obviously. But like I have these like construction earmuffs that I often wear when I'm tired, because I can't handle. But that, and I can still talk to people when I'm wearing them. It just kind of muffled. But I also, again, I think, oh, you can kind of see it here. So this is it's called Mighty Plugs, and this is not an affiliate thing. It's not sponsored. But these are wax earplugs that they're meant to wear to sleep. And I do
Okay.
wear these in addition to the earmuffs. That's how sensitive to sound I can be when I'm tired. Um, but I was just thinking, like, when you put these in your ears, and that really, really reduces what you can hear. And so if your husband was interested to maybe kind of experience it somewhat, he could
That's
maybe
so
try
true.
that. Yeah. And to like,
Yeah.
because you can still, the thing with, I have a bit of a background in audio, because a lapsed musician. I used to like record and mix all of my own stuff. I will do that again at some point in the future. But so I kind of learned a little bit about like, frequency spectrums, and like, the human hearing range is in a certain span, and there's stuff that dogs can hear that we can't, and there's stuff that's like like low enough that we can't hear it, but other, creatures can, that sort of
Right.
thing. And but part of what happens with like tinnitus, my understanding of what tinnitus is that it's the little hairs in our ear that vibrate to let us hear sound. They get damaged or they get flattened, and then they're permanently like sending that signal to the brain that that tone or that pitch is being heard. And so these different things like earplugs or earmuffs or earwax or whatever, and like these other ones, I won't be able to see this, I'm holding right now. It's a custom molded silicone. It's called a musician's earplug, and I brought these up on Kalina's episode as well. But they have a little filter in them, and these ones are a 22 decibel filter. So the way that those work differently than like foam earplugs reduce certain frequencies more than others. So they're good for like, reducing like high end more so. Um, and then these ones bring everything down equally. So it's like turning the volume down on the world, as opposed to just blocking part of the frequency spectrum.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lesson for you. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I've learned over time. So just on the note of like if you are kind of curious to, I mean, it's you
Yeah.
could also just like stick your thumbs in your ear really hard, but you know that's hard to go around like that. So, anyways, I'm gonna get back to the questions now so that we don't get too far off topic. Um, I guess if you haven't already, I guess, answered this to your satisfaction, are there any accommodations related to your disability that people should be aware of?
I think that's a really good question. And it's hard because everyone's hearing loss journey is unique to the individual. But I think that one that everyone could do today is just turn on auto captions for any content that you share. Instagram has made it really easy. It's just a click of a button, and then anything you share has auto captions. While they're not great, they are still better than nothing. Um, and I think captions for any like Zoom calls, team meetings, whatever, is the easiest thing you can do to help everyone, really. I mean, I think there was a statistic that was like 80% of people watch content on Instagram without sound. Um, and so captions can just help a lot more people than you realize. And that to me is probably at the top is just captioning anything and everything. And I mean, I use auto captions because I find it hard sometimes to go in and edit captions because I can't really hear everything that well. But again, they're better than nothing. And I think just having compassion when someone asks you to repeat them because it's already intimidating enough to be like, "Hey, sorry, I didn't catch it. Do you mind repeating?" And then somebody like, "Oh, what, you weren't listening?" And it's like, "Nope, I just didn't hear you,
Quite
didn't
the
catch you."
opposite.
And it's like you get taken aback sometimes when people respond to you that way, and you're just like, "Hold up, you weren't communicating very clearly. I'm just asking you to repeat yourself." And yeah, it does get frustrating if you have to ask 3 or 4 times, but then at the same time, it's like, "Okay, but why aren't you trying to maybe rephrase it or just change how you're responding?" And I think a lot of situations lack compassion, whether it's hearing loss related or not. So I think those are the two biggest things is just caption your content or caption anything that you're posting online that has audio and just have more compassion when people express their needs. Yeah.
Yeah, I just learned the other day, this is not related to hearing loss, it's actually more related to vision loss, but I learned the other day that there's a setting in the Blue Sky app that you can turn it on that if you're ever posting any kind of image whatsoever, it forces you to put in some kind of alt text with it.
Hmm.
And it's like, they should all have this because like I often don't remember to do it or don't think of or I'm in a rush or whatever. And but if it forces me, it's like, okay, I can think of like, 5, 10 words, like just like you said, anything's better
To
than
describe
nothing.
it.
So I'm like, okay, great, that's on Mastodon, but I don't, or not Mastodon, sorry, Blue Sky, but I don't post a ton on Blue Sky. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
just like start retraining myself to do that more.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the show, we did the visual descriptions ourselves, which is also for the benefit of visually impaired people. So thank you for doing that with me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's a good point though that you said, and I think that's something that I mean, on my journey I've struggled with too. Like before hearing loss, I wouldn't have known to caption my content. I wouldn't have known that, but because now I'm a part of the hearing loss community, it's something I'm aware of. And just like you just mentioned about the visual alt text, it's like again, unless someone had told me, I wouldn't have known. And I think that's another thing I find, and I am going to generalize here, just to make it easier, but with disabilities, those of us who are in each category, we, as frustrating and exhausting as it is, we need to be the ones to put the resources out there to help the people in our communities because if the CEO of a company doesn't have any connection with it, it's not in their mind. Or your manager or whatever, they're not thinking about those things because they've never had to. So if we can create those resources and present it to them, be like, hey, can you do these 5 things? This is going to help XYZ. If they say no, then, you know, screw them. But like we have to be prepared to offer the resources to see the change because we can't expect them to do the research or to know what to do. Um, and again, I know that's hard and intimidating and exhausting, and not everyone wants to disclose their disabilities, but at the end of the day, it's kind of up to us to force and like make those changes. Um, but it's not easy. And I'm not saying, oh, snap your fingers and it's going to happen. But I do think it's up to us to kind of create those resources to present to people who have no clue or who we need to see the change from.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And I'm gonna briefly tangent back into my thing again. I know I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier that like I have been passionate about like education and trying to like help people for a while. And when I started to get into this like speaking thing, I was like, I would be happy to speak on a lot of different things. People are like, well, what's your thing though? And so it's worked out
Right.
that I've gone primarily into like neurodivergence focus, but when I was talking to somebody from an organization about the fact that I took this initiative to try to start doing events and make them accessible in multiple ways. And he said like, oh, that's like I think that's a blind spot in the industry. Like there's not many people talking about like making events more accessible beyond like, wheelchair access usually. And so it's like, okay, well, I do have sense sensitivity. I do have some light sensitivity when I'm tired. So I've kind of identified now, and this is what it comes down to. The advocacy is about, hey, let's go talk to people that don't have this experience and help them understand why it matters and tell them, and like literally just what are the easy ways that they can make small changes and have an impact. And so I'm building this presentation right now to talk about like here's some really simple straightforward changes that aren't going to cost you $1 million that you can do to make
Yeah.
things a little bit better. And that's where I'm going to start and then kind of build from there. So
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah. um, so yeah, I think, and I don't know how if you've got a hard time limit here. We didn't talk about that, but
Yeah,
no,
no.
okay, okay. Because I know we booked like a half an hour, and I didn't know how much buffer there was. A little
Yeah,
bit
we've
of
got some
inside
more time.
baseball. Okay, okay. um, I guess so. You did kind of touch on this, but just in case, because I think each time I sort of ask you another question, you have great
Yeah, sorry, I go off on tangents sometimes.
no, no, no. It's good. Like I think this is I like the interviews where it's not just like, oh, question, answer, question. It's like there's a little bit more discussion because it's more of an
Yeah.
organic way to think of things. So the other question that's in the list here, and I know that you kind of touched on it a little bit already, but let's tackle it again. What discrimination or microaggressions do you experience the most often due to your disability? And is it a mixture? Is it more like words or actions or both?
Honestly, like I've been very fortunate with my hearing loss journey where I haven't really dealt with many of those. I think the one I get the most frequent though is like, wow, you can speak so well for someone who has hearing loss. Um, and that one I just laugh off, or I'm like, or like depending on who is saying that to me, I will maybe give them a more detailed response, like, well, I wasn't born with hearing loss, so I actually, had hearing until 25, so my speech, I could hear when I was learning to speak. But I think that's like the most common one I get is that I sound so good for someone with hearing loss, or people are surprised when I can hear certain things. And I'm like, well, I wear hearing aids. They do their job most of the time. But for me, when it comes to language, and I don't know when or how this happened, but no one could say something to me that would upset me. And I know actually within the hearing loss community, like I prefer to call myself hearing impaired, which I know a lot of people don't like at all. But for me, I find that it describes me the best because my hearing is impaired. I lost my hearing. I began to lose my hearing at 25. So that one resonates more with me than hard of hearing. And so if someone were to come up to me and say, "Oh, like you're deaf or you're hard of hearing or hearing impaired," like words for me don't bother me. It's more their actions surrounding the words. So I haven't necessarily encountered many of those examples, but if I were, words for me don't bother me. It's again how they treat me, I guess, or like their actions surrounding the words. But yeah, again, I've been very fortunate, and I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So I do try to be delicate when sharing my experiences, which I don't have very many of, or offering advice because, again, not everyone has great support systems. But yeah, the two, I guess, microaggressions I receive are just like, wow, you can speak so well, or you don't look like you have hearing loss, which I don't even know what that means. Like that one boggles my mind. I'm like, what does that mean? But yeah, I've been very fortunate to not encounter many of those.
I'm gonna put on my journalist hat here in a sense, and I
Yeah.
was just kind of looking into your guide again to because I know I was flipping through it at the event, and I was just like I agree with several of these. Um, so okay, that's the biggest one for me. So, but the one here, number 6, it says I don't always want to wear my hearing aids, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that if you want.
Yeah. So this one, like, so for me, for example, I get really moist and itchy ears, and with the humidity we get here in Ontario, it's not fun. So sometimes, like, if I'm outside, I don't want to wear my hearing aids because it's just like so itchy. And I mean, now that I have my daughter, I do wear them more often and I don't always take the breaks that I should. I think when it comes to like our assistive devices, sometimes like we just don't want to use them. Like we want to take a break and like for like you mentioned sound sensitivity, sometimes my hearing aids can make things too loud. And I'm just like, oh, no, no. Like I have to take them out. I need to give myself 20 minutes. I need to just not. I just need to like, whew. And it's hard because they're there to help me hear in situations. But if I do take them out, like I'll let whoever's around me know. But it's one of those things that, yeah, sometimes I don't want to wear them, even though they're there to help me.
That's again, I find this fascinating because my experience is almost kind of on the flip side where like I mean I do get because I often am wearing foam earplugs and yeah the sweat in the ears is legit and that's never fun. But like on a couple of episodes in this series, I'm not actually sure where they are at the moment, but my red lens glasses that I wear when I get tired and I get light sensitive, or if I'm at an event and I will like put on additional like I'll switch from the foam earplugs to the special ones, or sometimes I'll even go on the TTC and I'll wear my construction earmuffs because I'm just like I just can't handle the noise right now. And like it's again like for me it's about okay everything like, for me it's most often about I need to reduce the sensory input that I'm receiving.
Right.
Whereas when you have like a loss or deficit, you're usually trying to do the opposite. And that's so I guess that just sort of speaks to the fact that like these disabilities it is a spectrum and it can be either it's like
Yeah.
too much or not enough. And um I also, again, as I was sort of continuing to flip through here, and coming back to the idea of the advocacy, so number 19 says hearing loss is isolating. And that made me think of, the self advocacy. Yeah, there you go. You're putting up on the screen there. Thank you. I would, but my thing is blurred and I can't fix it. So,
No,
I
it's
mean,
okay.
fix it. But like again, that made me think because like we're talking about the advocacy of trying to raise awareness and have people to be more understanding. But in order to do that, you have to self-advocate, including like I've a lot of my disabled friends talk about self-advocacy with like medical professionals and trying to get like assessed and get tests and get answers. And so advocacy is not just, hey, be more accommodating. It's like actually even having the courage and the like the, ability to actually speak up and be like, hey, I need help. I need to be, accommodated or whatever.
Totally. And there was one like memory that sticks out in my mind early on in my hearing loss journey where I wasn't like really wearing my hearing aid and it was just on the one side at the beginning. And I was out, I think it was for a brunch, and I was just sitting at the end of the table. I wasn't really engaging in the conversations and stuff. And someone came up to me, they're like, are you having a good time? Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I just, I don't know, like y'all are there, but I'm just not feeling like I couldn't hear the conversations because there was like three or four side conversations, and I was just sitting there like I'm surrounded by people, but I feel so alone. Like it really, it was my first experience in my like hearing loss journey where I was like, oh, like this is not fun. And like after that, I think was when I started to wear my hearing aid more because I realized I didn't want to feel that way again. And there are still some situations where if I'm with a group of people that I do feel kind of out of the group. because there's just too many side conversations or too many noises where I can't keep up with the conversations, as it's the weirdest feeling to try and explain to someone like, I know I'm not alone right now, but I feel so lonely. Like I just it's one of those like if you've never experienced that, I don't know how to explain it because you're like, well, how can you feel alone if you're surrounded by people? But when you're not like when you're missing out on conversations that you're a part of, it's it's kind of a brain tease because it's just it's very strange and yeah, yeah. I've since early on in my hearing loss journey, I've become better at like stopping people like, hey, one conversation at a time. But again, that comes with practice and confidence and yeah, but hearing loss is very, very isolating and it's again, it's hard to explain to someone who's never had that experience.
Yeah, and that reminds me again, another, I'll briefly talk about my experience on this that I have figured out years ago that like I had a tendency because I have really long legs and because I get uncomfortable if I'm like sitting kind of bunched up too much. I got into this habit where I'd want to sit at the end of the table because then at least I could kind of stretch one of my legs out, not worry as much about kicking people. But then I found that I basically could only really hear the like people immediately on my right and left, and beyond that, it was like unless it was a quiet venue, it was a like calm conversation, but a lot of times it's not. So I kind of figured out like, okay, if I actually want to enjoy this and like get benefit out of it, I got to basically plant myself as close to the middle as I can, and then at least
Right.
I can hear the people sitting directly on my EZO side, and then across from the table, and then the two people beside this. I could hear five people instead of just two,
Yeah.
and maybe that's it, but that's still better. And
Yeah.
again, being really more forward and open about like, hey, I struggle to hear. Like I just did it at Creative Mornings Toronto on Friday. I said like, and it's not always an issue, but like I being open, like putting it up front, just that way, if it does start to become an issue, I don't have to be like, oh, by the way, I didn't mention, but hey, can you, so it's just kind of always there, and slowly I'll help to, raise awareness of it.
Absolutely. And that's a good point about like knowing where to sit because with hearing loss, like it's so good to be prepared and like know those little tricks. And as much as there's some really cool accessories for your hearing aids, everything's so expensive and like it's cool. Like I would love to have, the little microphone in the middle of the table to pick up to Bluetooth, but it's again like hearing aids themselves are already so expensive. And then there's all these other little features to try and help you hear better. It's like I wish my hearing aids just did that because they're just so expensive. Why do I need all these little extra accessories? But I mean, so cool and grateful that technology has come so far and that there is all of these capabilities. But I just, I actually did a poll a couple weeks ago and I just put the results out today actually about what's the biggest thing holding people back? Is it stigma or cost to get hearing aids? And it was cost. And I wish companies would focus more on like making hearing aids more affordable than making them more tiny and discreet because no one wants hearing aids to be visible. And I think if we could really reduce the cost, so many more people would be able to get the help that they need. And I wish there was a way that I could like make them more affordable or get more help from the government, but it's just yeah, it's just crazy that assistive devices are so expensive and there's so many things that people need and just can't get.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm gonna ask you because I actually don't even know, and I'm sure a lot of the audience doesn't know. How much does a hearing aid cost?
Well, there's a range. Like it's usually $3,000 for one. Like it depends on the brand and it depends on like all the features you get, but um it's usually around 3,000 for one. And the government will give you $500 per aid. So really nothing. And when I first was diagnosed and I only needed one, like thank goodness my parents were able to help me or I wouldn't have gotten one. It's like I was 25. I didn't have a few extra $1,000 just to be able to buy a hearing aid. So I'm very blessed and grateful for that. But yeah, it's a few $1,000s. And like again, technology's come a long way. There's some really amazing features like fall detection and Bluetooth and all these really cool things, but the people who need them can't afford them. So imagine like needing two. So that's about 6 grand, and then you get 1,000 off. That's still 5 grand. Like, that's still a lot of money. And they only really last 3 to 5 years, and then you have to spend that kind of money again. And it's
Yep,
just, yeah,
that's
it's just a lot.
again, I'm gonna pull from my multi-passionate experience in so many
Yeah.
different realms, because this brought to mind for me that I have also heard from my friends who are wheelchair users that wheelchairs are ridiculously expensive. I think they're like tens of thousands of dollars for good ones, and well, particularly motorized ones, certainly. But also, I follow Footless Joe on YouTube, who's an amputee, and she's talked to the kind of the exact same thing you were saying. Is like, even if you get a good prosthetic for your limb and it fits great and it like works great and everything, it may not, like, even if it's still, in one piece, and like, just because of the way that our bodies change and things, like that prosthetic just might not work for your body anymore in 3 years. And then you need
Right.
to get another one, and that's like another, what, 10, 15,000, however much it costs. So
Well, and like the thing too is like I learned on my own that like a hearing aid dryer will help in many cases increase the longevity of your hearing aids because moisture is one of like the top killers of your hearing aid. And like I mentioned before, like I suffer from really moist ears. And had I not like figured that out myself, like my first hearing aid might have lasted me even less because I wasn't taking care of it because I didn't know, because I wasn't told by the professional that I trusted that they were going to give me all the information I needed. And so that's one of the things I share often is like, as much as it's expensive, like invest in a hearing aid dryer because it can help increase, it's not always guaranteed, but it can help increase the longevity of your device. And we want to do everything we can to, make these last as long as possible because they're expensive. Like it's just it's crazy. And at my event, Hear Well Be Well, they had a petition set up to try and get the Ontario government to increase the AEDP for hearing aids because it hasn't changed since the 90s. Like, and think how far technology has come in like 35 years. Like, it's just, why isn't the government paying attention to this? And I don't know. It's just boggles my mind sometimes.
yeah, and that brings up another thing that I've it occurred to me, because I remember the first time it was pointed out to me that technically, like, eyeglasses, reading glasses, are an assistive device, and it's like we don't think of it that way because it's so common, it's so
Yeah.
normalized. But like a cane is not as common, so that still gets people's attention. Hearing aids still get people's attention, and like we literally, like, smartphones are a huge assistive device. Like I am kind of spatially, my spatial awareness kind of sucks, so like I have often, like, GPS is just a lifesaver for me. And like, I realize, like, as much as there's, again, this technology is a double-edged sword. So there's great things about it and there's less great things about it. And there's times where I think it'd be great if there'd just be times where I could not need a smartphone for, like, half a day or whatever. But if I have to, like, get around and stuff and like check the weather and check bus schedules and all this kind of stuff, like, how did we ever do this before?
So
So
true.
so I think that, like, this idea of assistive devices, like, we have to move past. I say we, the, like, sort of collective, not necessarily as much you and I, but the
Yeah.
collective society needs to move past this idea of, like, some assistive devices are, like, more acceptable or okay than others, and what do we prioritize and why. And, like, like you said, the government needs to take more leadership with this. I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
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 um Go
No, I
ahead.
was gonna say, and it's funny how like assistive devices or even like captioning softwares cost so much money. It's like, why is it so expensive to be accessible? Like it just blows my mind. And I mean, I understand everything has to cost something, like nothing in life is free, but it's just fascinating um, when things like that just aren't free or more accessible.
Mhm. I suppose, like, that's kind of the formal series of questions that I have here. I want to give you an
Yeah.
opportunity to, if there's any sort of, like, final thoughts or anything that you maybe haven't touched on that you'd like to. I want to give the floor to you for winding us
Thank
down.
you. Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on today. I think it's so incredible when we have more podcasts like this to talk about our experiences and just share, because you never know who you're going to reach and connect with and help. And um, with my story, again, like I didn't expect my channel to become what it is. I almost started it selfishly to help myself cope, and now I'm just so blessed to be able to talk to people and help people on their own hearing loss journey. And um, if there's ever anything that anyone needs, like I like to tell people my DMs and emails are always open. Like people can message me about anything. Like there's no topic off limits. I will do my best to, share my experience or offer any advice that I can. And yeah, my website, hardtohearit.com, has a bunch of different resources and other companies that help within the hearing loss industry. There's some ASL, lip reading, other cool merch and books that are available. And I'm hoping to continue to grow that with other resources and availability. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to share my story and to help people and help help educate people to the best of my ability. Because like you said, like I'm not an expert, but I do find that by sharing my experience and talking about things that have worked for me or haven't worked for me is kind of how we grow conversations and just build better understanding about things.
Absolutely. And on the subject of the accessibility, once again, I know this is more for people who are visually impaired, but while we're talking about it, I
Yeah.
recently connected with someone who does like accessibility consulting, and she has courses like online courses, video courses for or courses. She has 4 courses, and they're for making your like digital documents more accessible. So like Word, PowerPoint, PDFs, and there was another one that I'm forgetting. But like, because apparently, so what she told me is that like Canva, if you've ever used the website Canva to like make
Yeah.
designs, you can download them in different formats. And apparently, the PDF download format in Canva just garbles things, and it's not accessible to screen readers. That's what she told me. I have not independently verified this, so I should make that clear. But she said that there are other alternatives that do. And again, this is the thing. Now that I'm becoming more aware of the sort of accessibility aspects outside of my own experience, I'm trying to be better about kind of incorporating them, or at least knowing more about them, so that I can share that
Right.
information along with the stuff that I do know. So I kind of just wanted to mention that. But her company is called, I think it's Squarely Accessible. There is going to be a link in the description if people want to check that out. So but yeah, thank you. This has been I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned some things, and um, yeah, I appreciate your time, and I hope that lots of more new people come to see you and talk to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right, and once again, I'm Lacey Artemis. I'm a speaker, newly strongly into the advocacy and event accessibility space. My company is currently called Artie Mix Events. I'm thinking I might rename it at some point because I'm sort of going through changes here. But yeah, I've been honored to do this series, and like I said, learn the things I have and share them with the audience. And I hope you're enjoying it too. Let me know what your favorite thing that you've learned has been. And with that said, oh yeah, hat collecting on social media, mainly just Facebook and Instagram, I think. Um, but yeah, right there. So thank you for listening, and until next time, this has been the Disability Experience.